Hi, welcome to this show. We have a special guest for you. Her name is T. Palmer. And I kind of didn't have an idea of who she was outside of she was on my newsfeed everywhere, right? So I reached out to her and then, we chit-chatted a little bit, schedule her on the podcast. And then I want to bring that authenticity, right? Like try to understand people on the first try. And so throughout the show, you're gonna see me asking questions, and then she can download all these answers to me, and then I'm like understanding for the first time. And what I realized is everybody in short tech, all these events and all these things that happen, T is in the background on all of them, right? So I'm excited for you guys to hear this show and enjoy. Hi, welcome to this episode of Industry Voice. Today, I have a special young lady. Her name is T. Palmer. How are you?
Doing great today. Thanks, Jeff.
So, before you come on the show, we actually did a little pre-prep for the show because I just started seeing you popping up on my news feed everywhere. You're like checking here with David Gritz, checking there, popping up this group, popping on that group. And I was like, who is she? I gotta book her. Like,
Girl.
who is this mystery person? And then I went over to your LinkedIn page. Like, I have the other monitor. I'm looking over. I'm looking at your LinkedIn page, and you are like the mystery who's who with who's who doing all these cool, fun things in the insurtech world. And you have three companies that I see. One of them you sold. So currently you have two companies. So today, on this episode, for our audience, we're gonna dive into who is T and how did she get into all the things she do. And I'm just excited to have you on and learn more about you and your company. So thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. And I'm excited to talk about why you're seeing me in your insurance feed and why we have so many connections. So to give you a little bit of background, I feel like I'm the OG in the insurtech space without actually having my own insurance company. I started working with a few insurance clients back in 2016, 2017, specifically Capgemini and GIA, which is the Global Insurance Accelerator. And I actually put on the very first offsite event that ever happened during ITC. ITC is the largest insurtech conference in the US and globally. And during the leading up to the event, I was connected to a gentleman named Brian Hemeseth. So Brian, he was the head of the Global Insurance Accelerator in Des Moines, Iowa. And he had this idea of doing an event. We were introduced to each other, and he was like, I don't know, we may have like 50 people show up to the event. I don't know how successful it'll be, but let's just give it a shot. And we ended up having two really great co-sponsors, Salesforce and Accenture, on the event. And we ended up having 207 attendees for the event specifically. And it was very successful. And post-event, I had Jay Weintraub, who founded ITC, and Michelle Troop, his partner at the time. I had them ping me and say like, hey, who are you? Like, how did you, get into the InsurTech space? And, we heard about your event and, just want to get to know you. So I ended up having a call with Michelle and Jay. And long story short, Michelle started reaching out to me to help her with some of their other conferences. So to give you a little bit of background on Jay and Michelle, at the time they had a company called Next Customer, and they had launched and founded ITC, MAU, which is the Mobile Apps Conference, and HR Tech. And Clarion Events, who now owns ITC, they actually acquired MAU and ITC. So once I had my conversation with Michelle and Jay, they wanted to start working together. And so I helped them with their mobile apps conference, and I helped them with some of their activations during ITC, and just continued a partnership. And actually, Michelle, she doesn't work with Jay anymore, but I actually still work with her on an AI conference that she puts on in Las Vegas every year. So that's been a long time relationship and partnership that we've had. Yeah. And going back to the foundation, that event with Brian, we ended up continuing doing that event every year during ITC 2017, 2018, 2019. 2019, I bought out What Republic, and we ended up having 8 sponsors for the event. So that was the biggest one. I think we had about 450 guests. We had Highland, Duck Creek, TransUnion, AT&T. We had Salesforce there. It was a really large event. And one of the companies that we had was Holmes Murphy. And that was with Dan Keogh and Susan Hatton and John Jacobin. And during the event, Dan and Susan basically decided that they were going to announce BrokerTech Ventures, which is now, a huge cohort, and they really basically help support Insurtech startups in the space. But it was actually announced at our event at Web Republic that this is something that they were going to do. And fast forward, COVID happens. It's during, there's no really events or anything going on. And Susan actually reached out to me and she said, T, I'd love to continue working together. We had some calls, and basically I helped them. I became BrokerTech Ventures PR firm. So I helped them with a lot of their cohort announcements. They began their partnership with Kobe from Insurtech Israel. They onboarded Zurich to their board of directors, and I helped them with a lot of their announcements and some of their podcasts with Dan. And that's really how I starting to work with, the insurance companies. And in that, they introduced me to a company called TrustLayer. So I don't know if you're familiar with TrustLayer, but they are an insurtech startup. And I started doing some PR for them and, some media. And it was actually at that working with TrustLayer that I met David Gritz from Insurtech New York, because he was also consulting TrustLayer at a time.
So you have done a lot of things, seem like on the West Coast, Vegas, Des Moines, and then David's in the East Coast. He's in the center of New York. So we had this conversation before the podcast started, was where do you live? And you're like, you go back and forth between Vegas and New York, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I do live both in Las Vegas and in New York. So going back to me having 2 companies, I own a company called Jet the Agency, and it's a full turnkey event production company and exhibit house, and we're headquartered in Las Vegas. So we do a lot of the trade show booth build out for a lot of the companies that are there at ITC. And we produce a lot of conferences nationally. And in regards to my agency, a lot of my team is headquartered here in New York, and then some in California, and a few in Las Vegas. So why I'm here in New York, I started coming here like January of this year, and I just had this idea that, this is where all my clients are. My other largest industry vertical is fintech, financial. We worked with Money 2020 a few years in a row, which is kind of like the ITC comparison, but on the financial side. And a lot of the banks we work with, startups in the fintech space, as well as our insurance clients, are actually all here. So it just makes sense to have more of a presence here and build out an office.
That is fantastic. Like, there's so many cool things about insurance and insurtech. And a lot of people don't understand. It's like one big vertical of insurance is conference, right? And you have your legacy conference people who's been doing this for 30, 40, 50 years, because they're in the business of, I am the button you press for B2B acquisitions.
Right.
And then there's incomers of insurtech conferences, and they're like, okay, we want this space for B2B acquisitions. And you're the one behind the scene to make the magic happen.
I like to say
That's
so.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Especially like you part of all these OG stories. Like I had Bill Harris
Hmm.
uh, from Insurtech Connect, ITC Vegas on the show.
He's great.
Um,
He's really funny. So,
yeah, and I had Stacy Brown, David Gritz, Melissa Collette from Insurtech
mhm.
UK. Like everybody build their own community. In a way, you're like the string that tie all the community together. That's pretty cool.
So it's funny that you bring up so going back to David and Stacy, um, I had the pleasure of working with both of them, both on, I would say, like on the consulting side and also on the event production side in 2022. And I worked with Tony and David, and we brought their conference to the Marriott Marquis in 2022, and that was the largest event that they had ever had. Tony expanded into, with their prospectus into like, exhibit booth sponsorships and all of this. And I think their conference is really, really scaled. And, it was really great working with them and helping them, on that event and program. And 1 month right after their conference, we actually worked with Stacy for Insurtech Hartford as well. Previously, before COVID, he had always held his event at the JW Marriott in Hartford. And we brought him to the Hartford Convention Center, and he had a very successful event there. And now he's at the Mohegan Sun. And then one month later after that, by the way, I wasn't really sleeping much, during this time, but we actually we did the event for Insurtech Insights at the Javits Center. My partner, Jay Castellano, he and I have co-founded Jet. We fully produced their event. So we built out all of their trade show booths. We did all of the graphics, onboarded all the sponsorships, did all the activations, the lounges, built the entire 9 yards. And it was a very successful conference. And I feel like that was really helpful for Christopher, in expanding his US, footprint here. And I would say other than ITC, they're probably like the second largest conference, in the US. And they've now expanded to Hong Kong, and, they're doing really great.
So I have Megan coming on the show in the next month, next couple
Megan's
months.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, Megan, she knows everybody and everybody, right?
Mhm.
Hopefully one day Christopher will come on the show, if you're listening. So we I'm helping out Stacy and Arlen to launch their next venue, which is Insurtech Tampa, Insurtech Florida.
Yeah.
And maybe, I'll see you guys collaborate down the road. And there's a lot of insurance and financial companies based out of Sarasota, St. Pete, and Tampa area. It's a little sleeping giant waiting to happen. Not like as busy as New York and Vegas, of course, but when you rolled out Insurtech Insights, were you there for their first year during the New York rollout? Thank you for all your support to our channel. Here is a quick word from our sponsor. Please click on the link below in the comment section to sign up for a demo with Track AI.
What if your insurance sales conversations could work harder for you? Meet Track, your AI-powered conversation intelligence partner. Track automatically captures and analyzes every customer interaction, providing instant call summaries, risk analysis, and AI-driven coaching insights. Say goodbye to manual note-taking and hello to more selling time. Track handles the admin work while you handle the revenue. Fully integrated with your favorite platforms. Plus, get custom AI analysis tailored to your unique business needs. Transform your sales team's performance with Track. Visit track.ai today.
Click the link in the description below to schedule a demo with Track today.
We were there with them for 2022. So that's when we worked with them. So, after COVID, and that was their largest event, post COVID that they had. I think they ended up having several thousand attendees there, but we weren't working with them pre-COVID.
Yeah, when there's more competition, it's really good for the consumer.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating watching ITC and Insurtech Insights competing with each other for who can put on better event, who can put on better show. And Insurtech Insights have really grown really, really fast the last couple of years. Outside looking in, it's a is very interesting.
I
So
think to interject there, I think what Insurtech Insights does really well is they have really amazing content. So, I feel like they hit over 100,000 followers on LinkedIn recently, and they're constantly engaging with the companies that attend their conference, which I think is very smart. They're always on the up and up and understanding like who's gotten the next funding round, and their content is very relevant. And so I think that they come in at a different angle than ITC. And I think that that's part of, I would say that's a huge part of their success.
yeah, definitely shout out to the content people at Insurtech Insights.
Yeah.
And if you ever wonder, does content matter? And this podcast is tell you content matters.
Content does matter. Yeah. Content really does matter. And to go towards the agency side of things, I think content really matters, especially for a lot of the startups out there, and working with companies that actually understand what you do, so that when you're pushing out the content, and when I say that, I mean like the agencies, PR firms, but when you're pushing out your content, there's a lot of reasoning behind it, and there's an understanding to what it is that you're speaking about, who your product service is, who you're trying to connect to. All of those details really do matter.
Yeah, and somebody from the event space and venue space, right? How do you project the next 5 years looking like in the insurance and fintech space? I was talking to a couple of friends of mine, and we think there's going to be more smaller niche venues that's popping up. Is that the same thing you're thinking, or how do you see the space grow?
I think that there's a good possibility. Part of what I do when I work with clients is we do manage their event strategy and their go-to-market. I've met with every insurance and fintech conference globally, and I've met with their team, their content team, their sales team. So we have a really strong understanding to, the types of conferences that are out there, and what, who's attending and why they're attending currently. I think some of the concern from some of my clients, at least last year post ITC, is that, has the conference gotten too big? And for some companies, that's great, and they want to be part of the largest conference. However, for some companies, they do like more of those intimate settings, like the CAS events, or, the AHU or the target markets, where there's more of a chance for you to meet with your ideal client prospects. I think that we may see more of a wave of conferences and events that are very strategic, like a target markets, that you can meet who you're really targeting, and we'll see. But I think that could be a change that starts happening more in the industry.
Do you see the crypto events coming back?
I think the crypto events could come back as well. I think that there's a lot of relevance, with the crypto aspect, especially in the insurance and financial space. So I think that it's something that we could see a lot more of in the next 5 years for sure.
What are your personal favorite when it comes to fintech, cyber, AI events that's happening right now? If I want to, let's just say, go outside of the insurance circle.
One of my favorite events that's happening right now, it's actually called Fintech Meetup. Have you heard of Fintech Meetup before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm gonna
So
go look it up now.
Yeah, look it up, Google it while we're speaking. So funny enough, Fintech Meetup was created by the same founder that founded Money 2020. And what happened was it was two founders. They created Money 2020 conference, and very, very successful. And they were acquired by Essential. And the two partners, they split off, and they each started their own conferences. So one of them started Health and Vibe Conference, which are now the largest health tech conferences, globally and in the US. And then the other one, he created Fintech Meetup, and he created Shop Talk. And both conferences have been really, really successful. And What's unique about FinTech Meetup is, as you know, with a lot of conferences, it's really about the expo hall. You're trying to set up some meetings. There's a lot of these like meeting zones that, a lot of the conferences copy each other, and they have, 100 high boys, with numbered, 1 through 100, and you can like set up a time, to meet, with maybe a prospect client on the networking app. Well, what's interesting with FinTech Meetup is they have the networking zone, but that's actually like their main hub. I would say almost even more so than their expo space. And they have it as a timed interaction. So, it's 15 minutes. There's a buzzer. It's almost like you're doing speed dating, but with networking. And I had one of my clients was KeyBank, and they were just like, this is great. I think I made like, 30 prospects, just in like a short day, just with the way it was set up. So I just think it's interesting because it's a different take on how networking should be at the event. And they also guarantee at FinTech Meetup, they also guarantee you that you'll be able to meet with a lot of like they'll actually try to help pair you with your ideal prospects, and not all conferences do that. So that's definitely one that's a good one on the radar, and it is in Las Vegas. I would say 2 years ago they were at the Aria. Now they've been at the Venetian, which is the same venue that Money 2020 is at, but they do it in spring.
Two of my favorite hotel in Vegas, Aria and Venetian.
Well, Aria has so many great restaurants.
So many.
Yeah, so
like
many.
I'm a foodie, so I
Me too.
love staying at Aria.
Yeah, well, next time you're in Vegas, you can ping me and be like, where's the spots to go for good munching? And I'll let you know.
Randomly, like when it comes to like Asian food, especially like Chinese food, authentic Chinese food, I've seen some of the best Chinese food in Vegas, like maybe even over New York and LA, and that's a big statement, but Vegas have some good ones.
Yeah.
Go to your other company for a second. I want to save some time and get our audience to know your other company and everything about you. How did you get that company started to do branding and consulting?
That's a great question. I was working with a few companies more on the event production side and exhibit booth, and I had a few of them start asking me to consult them on their event strategy. So, like what I was discussing, like which insurance conferences should we go to, helping them with their brand messaging. And so I started consulting, it was just me working on this for some of these clients. And to name drop a few, Founder Shield was one of them. Instanda, I was working with them when they had their US CEO, Greg Murphy, and kind of helping them with their US go-to-market expansion. And it was about a year ago that I decided that I wanted to expand the company beyond just, me and our consulting services, and really built out an entire, full service agency. So we do everything from, web design, UI, UX to brand messaging, honing in on, your industry verticals or expansion, definitely go to market strategy, as well as, working with them on their brand and creative. So I have a really great team, and it's a lot of fun. And in addition to helping clients with their branding and, their PR and all of that, with this company, I've actually started doing our own events, which is probably what drew us to connect today. And I started doing founders dinners with David Gritz from Insurtech New York. I think our first one was March 26th this year. And it's really kind of taken off, and it's been fun to see it grow and develop.
I'd love to have a side note with you on future collaborations, but we can talk a little bit offline.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that dinner, because that's how I find you. I was like, hey, who's T. Palmer, right? Like,
yeah.
When you launched that event with David, what was the thing that he was looking for? So let's just say hypothetically, I am another VC. Yeah. And I am saying, I want to put all my portfolio company together. I want to get all these guys together in Vegas or South Beach, and let's come together once a year, do something more intimate in person. like a workcation, one day working, one day enjoying ourselves. So, what was the thing that David was looking for?
Well, to take it a step back, when David and I started working together, I think it was early spring 2021, he and I just hit it off right away. And I would say he's my closest, like one of my closest friends. What happened was I started calling him, and asking him about certain Insurtech jargon. And, we just kind of I ended up calling him every day, and our conversations became longer, and we just became really good friends. And we had always talked about like, hey, we're both very creative. We're always just like, let's go for it, with our ideas. We have a really fun energy together. And when I started spending more time out here in New York, we were just one day just like, why don't we do a founders dinner? Because we were both just talking about how, and David will say this at our dinners, being a founder can be lonely. You don't really have someone that you can just call and be like, hey, what did you do? And that, when you were trying to get your next round of funding, and how did you navigate through this? Or, what should I not do? Like not really having those people that you can kind of rely on in your network to just, be friends. And we wanted to build a community. Well, to take it a step further, when you start coming to my dinners, you'll see I'm very much so about highly curated experiences. So I never do an event or anything just for the sake of it. Everything has to have a lot of meaning. So from the menu that was selected, to the venue, to the way the food pairs, with, the drinks, to the entertainment, it's a fully curated experience. Our first one, I was a little nervous. I was like, how many people are going to show up? And we ended up having, 20 for 20 founders show up. And it was a mix from the Insurtech, fintech, and actually a few from the legal tech and prop tech space. And it was a great event. Hotel Chelsea here, Spanish theme. We did Spanish wine and tapas pairing, and had a flamenco guitarist. And then our second one, a node to your, good Chinese cuisine, was actually at Hutong in New York. And we did a 7-course meal. So with really great pairings of cocktails. And we had a live calligraphy artist that we had this really fun exercise where each founder said 3 words that meant something to them when they founded their company. And then she actually did live calligraphy art to that. So that was pretty special. And then in June, we did a founders dinner event during ITI on June 6th. And honestly, I wasn't sure, do we do the event? Do we not? David's like, let's go for it. And I'm like, yeah, but it's Insurtech Week here. It's Tech Week as well. There's a million events going on, like, are the founders going to find the same value? And it was that event that I felt like, okay, we're on to something. This is really great. We ended up having 80 founders try to sign up and register. And we were able to accommodate about 50 of the founders. And at the event, we bought out Catch Cabana Room here in New York. There was just this buzz of energy and excitement, and you could just feel that we were like on to something with this. So we've kept it going, and we had a founders dinner that was in conjunction to Insurtech New York's selection day. They do a number of these different events, and we had a number of the startups that were there at our dinner event, and then we just launched in San Francisco last week.
That is cool. It's
Yeah.
funny I had David on this podcast, and I know this podcast is all about tea, right? It's all about tea. But shout out to David. If you are listening, go follow David Gritz on
He's
LinkedIn.
amazing.
He is a cool dude, and he is just so chill.
You know what makes I have to give them both a shout out. You know what makes what Tony and David do so special, and it's actually part of the reason I love working with them, is that I really feel like they just truly care. And
Yeah.
and I say that there's a lot behind that, in the sense that, when you as a startup are trying to get started, or, you have a business, or you're trying to go to an event, a lot of people, when they think about, working with you, it's very transactional, and that's just how it is. It's cutthroat trying to make it, with your company, but they're not like that. They truly care. They care about valuable relationships, connections. That's been their whole business motto. Even when they started their initial Insurtech New York Spring Conference, it wasn't to build this into this massive thing. It was about to build really cool, genuine connections. And they've really stuck true to that. And I think that they're very unique in their space. And it's really what sets them apart. So I really love working with both of them.
And they're creative. I had
They're creative.
David on
David's
this
insanely
podcast.
smart.
Yeah, I had David on this podcast,
Yeah.
and the show was industry voice, and it's about people who build community, have follower base, and vocal influencers. But I was just like talking to David, I was like, man, he fits my other podcast, which you do too, T. My other podcast is Founder's Journey, to talk about your ups and downs as a founder, your exits and your failures. And I was like, David, you help founders, but you got 5 things going on. You trying to launch a lot of things. So
And he's a wicked snowboarder. Did he tell you that?
no, I did not know that.
Yeah, like David does like black diamonds. Like don't go with him snowboarding and think you're gonna be
I
like
would have
going
never
on
guessed.
green or blue. Yeah, he's going like backwoods and everything. He's a badass.
So what's funny is they had that Salt Lake snowboarding in like Utah Insurtech event that they put together with Stacy. And
Insurtech.
yeah, Insurtech Slopes, that's what they call it, right? Pretty cool putting founders and VCs all in the same room. You get to work, you get to present to each other, you get to ask each other questions. Super cool event. But the only reason I didn't go the last couple of years because I actually don't know how to snowboard. And I told Dave, I was like, you know what? I gotta admit it. I didn't come to your event because I don't know how to snowboard. And Dave was like, oh, don't worry about Jeff. We'll accept you. We'll teach you. You can go slow. I was like,
He will though. He's very, very patient, and I'm sure he'll teach you, and you would have so much fun. And as a backup, you could go tubing. So, you don't have
that
to
is true.
you could go tubing or sledding or whatever. That could be a good backup.
That is true. Is there any new events you guys got wrapped under the hat in stealth mode right now that you guys are working on? Because you got founders dinner. That's amazing, right?
There is actually, and we haven't announced it officially, but I guess I'm announcing it with you here. So David and I are putting on our first conference together, and it's launching in New York on January 23rd. And it's the Future of Founders, the Wellness Blueprint. So,
Wow.
yeah. So I know the suspense behind that, but I think it's going to be really interesting because, again, we work with a lot of founders, and the Wellness Blueprint, it's meant to tie in the things that we don't really talk about. Like, I think a lot of conferences and events, they kind of graze over, like well-being and all of that, but they don't really get into it and talk about tech burnout, mental health, emotional health, sleep health, gut health. Like, how do you navigate through that as a, founder? And in addition to that, I think that's something that's really important that we've seen start to happen post-COVID, and I think will continue, is I want to speak about the rise of the chief wellness officers in corporations and why that's really important. So the types of people who should be attending this events, I would say founders and any of their C-suite executives. I would say like their HR teams, but I think that it'll be a really interesting event, all around wellness and well-being. And we'll have another one in San Francisco in spring as well.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Shout out to the creativity. I mean, I'm sure I don't have a stroke of ego, but you guys are like on a different level. Like, bring these things to the marketplace. I hope we succeed, and I'd love to attend.
I would love for you to attend. I've missed our most important event that's happening in two weeks from today, if I can share it with you.
Yes, let's go.
In addition to our conference, David and I are hosting an event during ITC. So I'm extremely excited to do this. Like I said, I feel like I'm the OG of ITC events, and David and Tony have done their events in the past. It's October 15th at Area 15. And if you've never been at Area 15, that's where Meow Wolf and Omega Mart is. So it's fully experiential. We've bought out the portal and we're doing full 360 video projection mapping. I'm not going to give you all the details, but we're having really cool entertainment. I'm fully designing it out with my inventory from Jet. It's going to be a really amazing experience. And right now we have 90% carriers and brokers, and then some amazing co-hosts sponsoring the event that will be there with us. But I think it's going to be the event that people are like, wait, how come I didn't know about this event? I think you'll see some really cool visuals from that post event.
So I'm not a big Vegas participant. What is Area 15?
Area 15, it's like the new hotspot in Vegas. Like there's just in terms of, I don't know if you've heard of Meow Wolf, but in terms of like experiential, like immersive spaces with like art and things you can interactive, that's what it's all about. And same with Omega.
Where is it logistically?
Logistically, it's about 8 minutes from Mandalay Bay. So we're actually transporting everybody, to and from the show and,
Nice.
other coaches. But it's nice because I feel like specifically during ITC, everybody kind of gets stuck in the Mandalay Bay, Four Seasons, the convention center, and they don't know all the other aspects of, what the town has to offer. And this is definitely the biggest highlight attraction. So,
And what's the time slot you guys are throwing that event at?
so we're doing it's 6 to 9. So,
6 to 9.
it's a mix
Okay.
of happy hour, very curated menu, drinks. We're even doing liquid nitrogen ice cream. It's going to be
What?
wild. Yeah, I know.
So I was speaking with Bill Harris, and he said there's going to be 55 after party. So you
been
guys
over
got some
an hour.
competition.
This is actually the 56th. I'm not
Oh,
worried.
56, you're right, because
Yeah.
they didn't know about this one.
So, I'm not really worried about like when David and I do our events, I will say we have a pretty robust network between the two of us. And I'm not worried about us having competition, for the event, because we're not trying to have the biggest event, out there, but we will have the most curated experience. And, it's more about building a community, a high level of, VIP networking, and also a really cool experience too.
I'm going to ask you for a couple passes off this show. So
Maybe we can sneak some. Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. ITC is a crazy event. It's just so big, and I have a funny story to share,
I want to hear it.
2 years ago, I went to ITC for the first time. For those of you viewers never been to ITC, this year they're anticipating 600 vendors, 9,000 attendees. You know how like you come downstairs with a name tag, they allow you to the show?
Yeah.
But this is after you walk from one side of the hotel to the other side, like 20-minute walk. I messed up and missed my name tag twice and then walk all the way back, right?
Oh my God, that's horrible. You got your steps for the day.
Yeah, and then you see like these ladies wearing 4-inch, 3-inch heels walking around all day long. I was like, I don't know how you guys do it. So
It's a specific talent. It is. But for all the ladies listening, I do have a special trick, being in the events industry where you have to wear heels maybe all day. If you have 3 pairs of different heels, you can wear heels all day long as you just change it intermittently throughout the day, then you'll be fine. So Jeff, next time you want to wear heels, that's your tip. At least there's carpet, not typically in the convention hall, but at least there's carpet everywhere for them for their big stilettos. I may have been one of the women you saw because I was wearing stilettos walking around in a hot pink suit last year.
that's props. I don't know how you guys do it.
Yeah.
So your company's grown. You have 2 companies grown. What do you look for when you hire somebody? Because what you do is a little bit different, right? Not your traditional event, not your traditional insurance, just everything a little bit more between, especially when you're trying to create. So when you have people, whether partnership to join you, or to join your team, like what are you looking for when you're hiring people?
So what I look for is there's a few things. So definitely the creative aspect. I have a really great team. I'm really proud. Both companies, I have two really great teams. With my newer company, T Palmer Agency, what I like to call them, I call them my team of aces. So everybody that I've hired, they've been very highly vetted. Like we actually have a graphic designer position up right now. We had over 1,300 applicants. So, when I tell them like you are the top selected, when they get to their interview process,
How
they
many applicants?
1,300 applicants just for the graphic
Wow.
designer
Wow.
position. Yeah, so our team, I feel like they truly are the best of the best, the top in their field. There has to be a creative aspect, but they're also, I do like to hire team members that do have an understanding of tech, and AI. And I do, I like to work with team members that have an understanding of, like Insurtech or fintech, and also can be really creative as well.
That's cool. How do you tell someone's creative?
Well, that's a great question. So I can tell my employees how to do something. Of course I can. I can say, this is exactly how I want you to do it. This is the way it needs to be done. But that's not why I hired them. I hired them because they're an expert at what they do, and there's a reason behind that. So being able to take, whether it's our own internal project or it's a client's project, and being able to take the overall, overarching objective goals and being able to translate that into their own interpretation of what we're trying to say, the image, like what are we speaking about? I think that being able to come up with that on their own, that really shows that creative, because I want them to take that next step. So I didn't hire them to micromanage. I hired them because they're great at what they do. And, I want them to kind of fly, with the project.
Okay. Fly with the project. Stay there for a second.
Fly with the project. Where did that
You
come
you have
from?
you have clients in the insurance world, and insurance is not one of the easiest compared to like athletes, branding, or crypto branding. Insurance is a little boring, right? A little bit on the boring side. When you talk to your customers, founders of their business, try to create their brand, how does that conversation look like?
There's a lot of levels and layers to that conversation, but I would say one of the most important things, and actually it's funny, I was moderating a panel for Insurtech New York's event a few weeks ago, and actually I was moderating with the panelists were a few journalists that were, in the Insurtech space, and this was definitely brought up. A lot of companies and founders, I'm probably guilty of it myself, get really caught up on their product, which is super important. That's really important, right? However, the mistake that a lot of them make is not thinking about how the average consumer, or maybe even VC, understands their product. So if you're an insurtech and you're providing a certain type of service, can I easily understand what it is that you're providing when I go to your website, when I go to your social media? And are you the company that comes to mind when I think that I need that service? And I think that that's the biggest thing that a lot of companies, need help with. They may have a really great product, but being able to understand and, it being fully comprehensive of what their services are, it may not be there. And one of the panelists from that session that I moderated, she had said, if I have to look up the words that you're using to pitch, your company, I'm not going to do it. And so there's something to be said about that, in the sense of that, it's not that, using the insurtech, or tech jargon, you can't use it, but making it digestible is really important.
That's gonna be a YouTube Shorts, like Instagram Reels right there. That's what's crazy is I see CMOs in insurance, right? They get like these big salaries and they miss some of the most basic things in core marketing and branding of their business models. And the legacy attention versus the new generation attention is really changing really, really fast.
Mhm.
T, I'm gonna give you a little pound there. That was good. That was you get it. And
And
you know,
you have to think about like who's your audience now too, right? So like I'm a millennial. I'm 86, so I'm a millennial and there's Gen Z and these are the people that are going to be buying your product, right? And the way technology is today, it's you're flipping through your phone, you want to see quick visuals, you don't have time, you're running around, you don't have time to, like try to understand what it is that this is selling to me. And so that's how people need to think, and the social media platforms, like Instagram, yeah, I would say, like TikTok, there's so many different social media, platforms that people are using, but how are you digesting, your service, whether it's there or on your actual website? I think it's a really, really, really important thing. So
I'm disappointed this episode is only an hour long, right? Like you and I, we can literally
we could
go
have
like
another dive into it. There's so much. I'm not short on my opinions and my thoughts. And I think this is really my expertise in consulting, brands and companies is really honing in on, the meaning behind it, and to further that, I think that a lot of companies spend their money, whether it's for big sponsorships or going to shows or, all of these things. And especially when you're a startup, every penny, every dollar counts. It's really, really important to do it strategically and smartly and not focusing in on, just the key aspect of what I was saying, is it digestible? Do people understand? I think that can cause a lot of pain points down the road. And I see a lot of startups where, 2-3 years in, now they're like, oh, we need to fix this. We want to go for a series A, we want to go to series B, but really when you're in your seed funding round or, when pre-seed and you start focusing on this in the beginning, it'll take you a lot further.
hey, when you flipping through your phones, checking out other people's events,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the inspiration that you get from that draw you, that started the spark?
That starts my spark
If you
for.
look at across the pond, right, it could be your consulting company, branding
Mhm.
consulting company, or it could be your event. Like when you're looking at other industry with other people who are your peers or your competitors,
Mhm.
anybody come to mind that started like, hey, that's a benchmark right there.
I think the things for me personally that have the highest benchmarks are the events and the events that have the most cultivated experiences. So that's what I look at. Like going back to what I said earlier, a lot of companies and conferences, they just do an event to do an event. And I'm not dogging on them saying, but they have the pipe and drape, they have, the linen tablecloths. And yes, there's networking, but there's no experience behind it. Someone's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to do an Instagram, like posts, like with this photo op, So I think for me personally, I really gravitate to looking at what people are doing experientially, where people are excited that when you see a lot of people post about a conference or an event, yes, there's, people are excited and they're posting about who was there that they networked with. But I guarantee you a lot of them are the event space and how it was designed, how it was curated, what was there, who was there. They want to feel excited to go again and wonder, And for all the conference, founders out there and, companies that put on the conferences, thinking about what you're doing next, because you may have had a high this year, but then how are you going to top that the next year? And, for your consumers, your clients, your attendees that are there, what's going to have meaning to them at that next event? And that's what I look for inspiration. And I hope that with the events and everything that we're doing, that we're providing that same kind of experience for people that come to our events.
That is pretty cool. I am looking forward to have you back on the podcast. Maybe we don't wait until a year from now. We wait a little bit shorter, maybe half a year from now, and hear about all the things you guys are doing. Before I let you go, I want to hear some personal goals. So a year from now or half a year from now, when you come back, what are some personal goals T set for herself? The hard ones, the impossible ones, and the comfortable ones.
Oh, that's a great one. We'll have officially opened up our New York office. So I think that's a hard one, but it's not an impossible one. New York is a huge city, but it's not going to chew me up. I love being here. I would love to see our conferences be very successful, both of our future founders events. And, in terms of our goals, we're starting to do these founders dinners in multiple markets. So we're doing our first one in Charlotte, North Carolina in November. We're expanding to Austin, and, I want to continue building these communities, nationwide, and then have it, turn into maybe a larger event and, just continue growing with it.
I want invites.
You have invites to every single one. You just tell me when and where, and you'll be really happy because you'll get to eat a lot. So, yeah. So in terms of eating and foodie to foodie, I got you.
You got me. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then what's funny is I just had like an image of David trying to teach me how to snowboard, and I'm falling on my ass.
Yeah, but then you can come to the dinner afterwards, and then maybe you'll have like a hot toddy and a French onion soup or something to cure your pain.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, looking forward to
but...
meeting you in person for the first time in ITC Vegas, and we got to get a selfie together. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast. And this actually been a very enjoyable one. Like I had a lot of fun just deep diving into everything you do, and excited about watching you grow.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being on your podcast, and looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks in Vegas.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.